Hello, dear friends. We greet you again today at our virtual lesson. To be honest, today I wanted to hold a lesson on questions and answers, because over the past few days we have undergone through a lot of material here in our center, which was broadcast to all the groups. But it's quite possible that you weren't present in your groups, because today's lesson is for our new friends. I'm going to repeat this material just in case. If you have questions on the material, or if you don't, just so you know what we've been studying and what is it that we need this material for, why we're studying it, why we're putting so much attention and focus on it. You and I we're studying the only state that exists, that we exist in, and this state is called Malchut of the world of infinity. The only created creation, in which there is a desire, and this desire is completely filled with delight or pleasure. This is what Kabbalah calls it. By desire, we mean essentially any sort of perception of oneself by us, any perception of myself by me. Any matter is desire. And pleasure is the fulfillment of this desire. It is that animating force which gathers all the little pieces, as it is done in quantum physics, atomic physics, and then out of those they form molecules, and molecules then go on to form bodies and organisms, and these organisms are then create all kinds of microsystems and macrosystems, both on the micro and macro level. All this pleasure fulfillment, it sustains, it forms the desire under itself. Essentially, everything that exists consists of two aspects: matter, which is essentially desire, but in our perception it is simply perceived as matter, inanimate, vegetative, animate, and human. But in the spiritual worlds, this matter is manifested in different forms. So what this tells us is that even in our world, what seems to us as inanimate, vegetative, animate, and human matter, it's not matter. These are forces that paint these various images in front of us. Just as on a computer screen. Behind the computer screen there is a force. There are all kinds of things and vectors that are happening there, but what they do is on the screen they paint all kinds of inanimate, vegetative, animate or human images, objects on a computer screen. When you look at the computer screen, we imagine that all this is not real, it's artificial. But you and I exist in this special, unique kind of screen in which we actually live, and to us it is presented in such a way that we don't even perceive it as anything different, as anything else that behind it. It is as if a person that is connected has a helmet with electrodes connected to his brain, and he dreams and he imagines that everything he's dreaming is actually real. But our perceptions and sensations, they also consist of these vectors, millions of vectors, which draw to us the images of us and all that surrounds us. But in reality, all these vectors are desires. That's the matter of all these vectors. And the direction of these vectors, those are the two components. And it's directed towards pleasure. That's where it aspires to. Therefore, in Kabbalah, this is how we define our existence. And the state of desire and fulfillment, they exist and they're completely equal to one another. For this reason, this world is called the world of infinity. The world of infinity. Essentially, the world without limits. Without limits. There are no limits, there is no end. Here, there is no end, there is no limit to what? To fulfillment. However much fulfillment you want, you can receive it instantly in that world of desire. That is why this state is called the world of infinity. It is not limited in any way. And the next state, now this is where it gets interesting. The thing is that this initial state that was created, there is no creature. In order for the creature to begin, it needs to be separated from this perfection so that it could feel separated from it, so that it wouldn't be overcome by this fulfillment and pleasure. It needs to be completely isolated and separate. So the next state, we're going to draw the world of infinity as a state right here. And the next state is one that stems out of the world of infinity and goes downward until it is completely separate, completely different from it. If this is the world of infinity above, then this world is completely opposite to the world of infinity, meaning there is nothing in it that is infinite or without limits. It is the world of evil. Everything in it is evil. And consequently, we can say that the world above is the world of good, because that is how we perceive fulfillment. Or our world, we also call this world. Why this world? Because we can point to it. This is how we perceive it. This world. So then, even before our appearance in this world, we descended from this ideal, beautiful surrounding, beautiful space up above. We descended below, and as we descended, we would gradually lose our perfection. So these states where we would lose our perception, or our perfection. These states are called worlds. The world of Adam Kadmon, the world of Absolute, Biriya, Yetzirah, and Asiya. And our world at the end. What is the difference between all these worlds? The only difference is that in the world of infinity, we all existed in complete interconnection with one another as one single organism. And as we left the world of infinity, we gradually lost this connection. So now, for instance, let's erase this. In the world of Adam Kadmon, there is still a space, but now it is only 80% filled with interconnection. And in the world of Absolute, the same space has only 60% connection. In the world of Biriya, 40%. Yetzirah, 20%. And Asiya has practically virtually 0%. And we are essentially, we exist in the world of Asiya. So what is this connection between us? The thing is that in the world of infinity, this fulfillment, pleasure, it united us, connected us completely, and for that reason we were in complete interconnection. In this we were completely like this pleasure. We were united into one. But in our world, we exist in a completely opposite state. We are total oppositeness of this interconnection, and this is the breaking between us. And naturally, for this reason, we feel the light that exists, the light of fulfillment that exists, as zero. We cannot perceive it. Why is that? Because there is a law of equivalence of form, the law of equivalence of form or of rights, or equivalence of matter to the one who fulfills it. We've used examples before, such as if I have a radio frequency, then I need a receiver which generates the same exact frequency. That's a dial that I can turn either way. And then if within the receiver I generate the same frequency, then I can catch this frequency from the outside and listen to it in my receiver. So there needs to be equivalence between the receiver and the transmitter. If my ear is structured in a way that it only hears from 20 to 20,000 hertz, then there is nothing I can do. Then these are the only sounds that I can hear from the outside. And I cannot hear anything else, even though there are animals, creatures who... There are sounds emitted by dolphins, for instance, or certain birds that I cannot perceive. If my nose has perceptors that perceive only a certain frequency of sounds, not sounds, smells, then if this frequency of sounds exists outside of me, then I can perceive it. The rest I can't. Dogs, for instance, they perceive a much greater frequency of smells than other creatures as well, and so on. So all our sensory organs are based on equivalence, or touch, smell, sight, hearing, and taste, to the degree that I can create in myself a particular quality. To that same degree, I can sense this quality outside of me. For this reason, we see why we're limited. I exist in the world with my 5 sensory organs: sight, sound, taste, and touch, and smell, and all tactile sensation. All this exists within me in a particular range. There's a particular range to it. And so these 5 senses, these are 5 senses. my 5 bodily senses, because they depend on my body and they exist in my body. They restrict my perception of the world. I'm simply used to living this way and perceiving the world in this way. But in reality, it is far, far richer than that. To what degree, I don't know. Simply, there are creatures in this world that perceive more. If I were to invent a device which would, for instance, like a hearing aid does, it allows me to hear either infra or ultra frequency sounds. And here there is a transmitter, or maybe not a transmitter, or a transformer, let's say, which transforms the signals of the higher or lower frequencies that comes in, just like a radio does. What's so special about a radio? It was only invented recently, maybe 150 years ago. Why? Because here I have frequencies that are greater than 20,000 hertz. But I convert it. It's a converter. Converter is a better word. I convert it into frequencies that my ear can hear. So now you have a device which adapts for me, for my body, everything that I can possibly sense. Well, then, can I sense everything that is out there? No. The more we discover nature, the more we reveal that we cannot perceive many different things and phenomena. And we don't know which other devices we need to invent in order to perceive them. And there's probably no end to it, because essentially we can understand only one thing. How we can only expand our 5 senses. That's all we can know. But what if there is another sense? For instance, what if I had a 6th finger? I don't have a deficit. I don't feel it because there is no, I don't have it initially, or a 3rd eye or anything else. So it turns out that I can only expand the range of perception through my eyes and ears and nose, tactile sensation and taste, and that's it. But if there are any other sensory organs, then I don't know them. And here we are facing a problem. The fact is that I am extremely limited, extremely restricted, mechanically restricted, because essentially I depend entirely on my body, which has these 5 sensory organs. But if I were to come outside of my body, how can I do that? My body, all of my senses, as it turns out, they are built based on the quality of reception, egoistically. The reception of the ego. If I were to rebuild myself, restructure myself, there is, let's say there is a quality exists of complete bestowal. What would I perceive then if I were in it? I don't know, but there is an opportunity for me to do that. I can expand my 5 physical sensory organs up to infinity, but I wouldn't really attain anything substantial by it. So I will be the most perfected human being in my world. I will live the same amount of years, maybe a little better, maybe a little worse, but I still already see that this is not something that would satisfy me. Ultimately, the path that I undergo in my development, I see that it's not fulfilling me completely. I see nature pushing me and telling me that these 5 sensory organs that are included in your physical body, no matter how much you would fulfill me, no matter how much you would discover for yourself new things, you will never feel complete, lasting fulfillment because your body is restricted and temporal. So there is another option. something that we haven't tried yet. It is a place of perceiving the universe. Now we perceive it in total reception, but you can't start perceiving it in total bestowal when you come out of yourself. In that, then you would not depend on your 5 physical senses. Is this something that we can attain? Well, this second, we can call it a version or a method of perception of oneself and the world. This is the method called the wisdom of Kabbalah. Kabbalah in translation is reception, to receive. So can you perceive yourself and the surrounding world in this way? You can only by replacing the paradigm of your reception, from reception to bestowal. Then we don't need these 5 sensory organs. We don't need to invent any devices for ourselves that would expand the frequency and then adapt it into frequencies that we can perceive the way that we see the television or watch listen to the radio. We don't need any invented devices. We need something else. Not to adapt the outside world for me, but to adapt myself for the outside world. It's a completely different approach to the universe. It's not that I force it to fit, to suit me, but I change myself to suit this world, this universe. That's getting pretty interesting. First of all, how do I know how to change myself? How am I going to get the strength, the power to change myself? How do I know how to do it? What is it going to give me in the end? At the same time, this opportunity is there, and our evolution is bringing us to the point where we're going to start to do that. Because our evolution, it leads us to understand that we all exist outside of ourselves. And we're moving toward it globally as an integrated organism. That there is one force that governs everything, governs all of us. And in order to perceive it, we all need to be together as one in order to be able to perceive this force. And lately, we've been really revealing interdependence on a global scale. Have you ever seen a school of fish swimming? It's not that the leading fish changes its direction and then everybody else follows. No, in the same instant, the millions of fish that exist, they all change the direction at the same time. Just as also a flock of birds. It seems to us maybe that the bird that leads changes direction and everybody follows. No, and they exist in one force. They're governed by one force, and they all change the direction at the same time, instantly. And the more we reveal nature, the more we see how global it is, this is a closed system where one force governs absolutely everything. Just like our organism, our body. When it's healthy, it is governed by only one vector. All of its systems work in order to functionally sustain one another, and every single cell knows about every other cell in the body. If in the entire cosmos one star wouldn't know what's happening with every other star, it would all fall apart. This is one enormous harmonious system that it always maintains connection between all its parts. So ultimately, everything is governed by one force on all levels, on physical, physiological, biological levels, and so on. So in order for us to start perceiving this force, we need to acquire this quality, the quality of bestowal. And for this reason, we see that nature really is pushing us towards this. It is giving us the notion allowing us to understand the notion of our complete interdependence. And we know about this principle from Kabbalah. Kabbalah tells us very simply, you exist at the very bottom in a broken state where 7 billion wretched, limited, confused creatures who don't know what's going on to themselves or the world around them, they exist in hatred between one another, and they suffer. They don't receive anything. They consider their lives happy, even though they don't even realize that their lives are wretched and that they're worse than death. But they don't yet understand that the nature is pushing them to understand that this particular principle of interconnection, global interconnection, and we're all moving closer to this state where we're going to see that truly we are connected as one into one organism, and nature looks at us as one organism and not separate individuals. And if we don't see this yet, soon we will. That's one. And two, that we are miserable, that we have this great unanswered question of the reason for existence. And three, that in the world, gradually, there is a sensation that is slowly being revealed of a unified governing force, which is nature. This is nature. And even today, we're beginning to realize that it's one, and it governs everything. It's whole, a single whole. And so how do we attain this single unified governing force? Very simply. For this reason, the science Kabbalah tells us, for this reason we are created separate. We don't need to run anywhere. We need to simply connect, unite between one another. In this world, we have 7 billion miserable individualists who are suffering and dying and are being reborn again to be more miserable and die again. Today, into this day and age, we don't even know why we give birth to the new generation. It's for them to be just like us, miserable like us. So, to the degree that we connect together, gather together, to the degree of our equivalence, we're going to perceive this upper force. It doesn't exist the way that I drew it. I simply drew it because to liken it to the way that we perceive radio frequencies and so on. But in reality, this force exists within us. The Creator, or the light, this force exists within us. Here is the light fulfilling, and here are the 7 billion souls. Why souls? These are simply desires. Egoistic desires, that's the key. To the degree that we connect them, to that degree we will feel the single unified force of the Creator that exists between us. So these gradations of our connectedness, they constitute the upper world. So let's use a different drawing. I'm always struggling how to express this on paper. Suppose this is our world, in which we are completely disconnected, 7 billion, and if we connect, suppose we become 700 million, let's say, and then in 7 times 10 in the third, to the third power, and each time we're more connected, then it's 70, then 7, and then 1. So then this world would be called the world of Asiyah, this world is the world of Yetzirah, this world, the world of Biriyah, Absolute, This is Adam Kadmon, and this would be the world of infinity. To the degree of our interconnection, unification, we will reveal within, to the degree that we're equivalent to this force above. Here in this world we don't perceive anything, it's complete darkness. Here let's call this nefesh. That's the light of nefesh. This is the light of ruach, because we still exist in some state. This is the light of neshama, the light of chaya, the light of yechida, and here we have the world, the light of infinity. The light of infinity. This essentially is the whole of Kabbalah. The only question that remains is how do we connect? We can draw this very differently, in maybe much better than the way that I drew it. If you send me your drawings of what we have here, I'll be very happy to put it in the archive instead of mine. So what we're doing here, this is the method of our unification. Because to the degree that we unify, immediately we're going to feel the light in that unity. We don't have to run anywhere or try anything. The only thing we need to do is to connect all of us into one single unified force, desire, mutual desire. And then we're going to receive this upper light which will manifest in us. The science of Kabbalah tells us this many times. This very thing. Of course, when we read it, it is presented to us in very high forms, high exalted forms, and it talks about the entrance and exits of the light into the desire, the vessel, and all kinds of things that happen in it. It's like quantum physics. You have the photons leaping from one level to the other, and desires are also leaving, coming out somewhere. There's this very fantastic picture that is presented to us. But essentially, I would say that the principle is very simple. It is simply the unification of all the artificially separated, isolated desires, artificially, deliberately, for these disconnected desires to be gathered once again into one. If we go back to our previous drawing, we say that from the world of infinity there is a disconnection between its parts, a separation of them, of all its parts, and as they descend into our world, and upon its descent into our world, in this world we feel total disconnection between ourselves. And for that reason, the light that remains in this world, it is that minimal light that we feel as our life. In the language of Kabbalah, Kabbalah actually is presented in two languages, in Hebrew and in Aramaic. Aramaic is an ancient language that was spoken in ancient Babylon. So this level of the light is called nefesh. But besides nefesh, it is also called, so you know, because you're going to hear it again many times, it's called kista de chayuta. It is a Kabbalistic designation of it. It sounds very mysterious. Kista, it means a tiny, tiny portion, and the chayuta is a portion of life. It's like a microscopic portion of life. So, when this unity descends into its total breaking into our world, when the upper light exits it, stops manifesting in it, within it, then we need to do the exact opposite. We need to ascend along the same path, except from below upward. And that's it. And to the extent that we connect, unite from zero, where we are now, the bottom point, to the level where we have 20% unity, 40% unity, 60, 80, and full 100, to that extent, as we ascend and unite, we're going to pick up these lights of Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida. This is what the science of Kabbalah explains to us. Essentially, this is the only thing. Two things: how we have descended from the first state, our original initial state, into this second state below. This was before us. We don't remember this. It's really none of our business. But the part where from the second state we rise, ascend to the third state, because this is the third state now, not the first. Why? Because here we ascend by ourselves independently. We begin to attain ourselves and everything else that exists. And we begin to consequently perceive everything very differently. And as we said before, here we have 7 billion egoistic desires, which must unite from the first state to the second, to the third, to the fourth, to the fifth. And these states are all called the worlds, and that's why we have the five worlds. And then they reach the final state, sixth state. And there are gradations to all of these states, all of these worlds, because everyone there are sub states. There are 5 worlds which you have drawn here. Asiya, Yetzirah, Bria, Atzilut, Adam, Kadmon, and each of those 5 worlds has 5 subsections, and those have 5 subsections as well. So each world has essentially 25 states, substates, and we must pass through all of them while we're still living in this world. How do we do that? After everything we've said, we only have one question now. How do we do that? Whether we want to do it or not, that doesn't matter. We're obligated. Either it happens seemingly independently, willingly, which is what we're doing here with you, or we're going to be pushed toward it by nature. We're going to be forced by suffering to undertake this. So then we're going to come to the same exact point, to the need to realize, actualize Kabbalah, which tells us very simply, in this world, in this huge, great world of desire, you're brought to this one tiny desire called the group. You are brought to the group so that in the group, you would actualize the connection, the unification between its members. In the group, there is a teacher. You know, when I was in Germany, one of my students called me a group Führer. It turned out that that actually means a group leader or instructor. It was odd for me to hear that being called a Führer, but that's what it was. So you have students, you have a teacher, and together they try to actualize the system. In a small system, and there's no difference essentially between a small system and a big system. They are essentially the same. So if in our small system we attain unity, then we begin to feel we begin to perceive the upper light along the same levels, Naranjai, the lights of Naranjai that manifest within us. If we are ascending along the same 125 degrees, from degree 0 we reach degree 125, we reach the world of infinity. Naturally, this isn't the whole world of infinity yet, but still, within ourselves we perceive all the existing degrees and states. But in our time, we have come to such a state as humanity that to the extent that we develop this unity between us, to that extent we're going to be attracting everybody else that exists outside of us. All kinds of social layers and circles, they will gradually be drawn to us until we all unite into one unified whole. How do we do that? We have a very strict law. As soon as a person acquires a point in the heart, which is the desire, toward unity. He doesn't know this. He doesn't know that this is a desire toward unity yet. He simply feels that there's something in his life that must be changed, something that must. He has a question: the purpose of life and what is it all for. He is eventually led into the group, where he can begin to actualize his desire to unity. Again, he doesn't yet feel that this is a desire toward unity. He doesn't understand why he was brought to the group. And the teacher. He understands the teacher. He realizes that he needs to learn something. He then understands, okay, so there's a group here because, I can't be the only one learning. So this is the way it is. But then, with time, as he continues to study, he begins to hear more and more about the necessity of unification, that the group is connection, and it is connection not only to be, as like good kids, like good children or good friends, but this connection is necessary, and in this connection we reveal, or rather the upper force is revealed in this connection. In this connection, the upper force is revealed. And here we come to a method. How do we begin this connection? How do I begin to actualize this connection within myself? As soon as I begin thinking about it, I just want to throw up. I don't want to do anything. I don't want this connection with others or anything of the sort. I am a complete egoist. Because I am born below these 125 degrees, separated from everybody. I hate everybody else. I only want to rule, dominate everybody else, and use them for my own benefit. I don't want to bestow to them, to love them. And if I commiserate with them, it is only because I feel bad too. And the only time I give them something is to soothe myself, because I imagine myself, perceive myself in the same state that they are. So everything it still pertains to me, not to everybody else. So when we view this nature, this world, we come to a really terrifying conclusion that we're all absolute egoists, and on all levels, on inanimate, vegetative, animate, and human, biological, intellectual, social level, our matter is absolutely incapable of working otherwise. This is the way that it was created, and you cannot simply jump out of your own skin. This is the way it is. So then what do? This is a dead end, it turns out. We return to our lives, and we continue to live however many years we're given, and then we close our eyes. Or is there a different option? Yes, there is a different option, and it is very simple. As it turns out, there are people who have already acquired the quality of bestowal. 5,770 years ago, this quality of bestowal was acquired by a person called Adam, or you know how the Americans call him Adam. And Adam comes from the word similar, equivalent. So I'm drawing you the sign of equivalence. So this person became equivalent, similar to this upper force, in that he had acquired the quality of bestowal, connection, love. No matter what we call it in this world, it's not the same love that we call in this world, like hormones that we need to satisfy. And that's why I love, fish, I love women, I love rest, beer, and so on. We're talking about love. Here, this love is love for the other, where you fulfill the other instead of fulfilling yourself. So this is the love, exiting of yourself. If this is my ego, this is me, then everything that is outside of me I want to attach to myself. So for all of these things to be me, myself. Can you imagine feeling something like this? And whatever I feel inside, within, for it to be not me, but... So this is not me. This is a very interesting form of connection between the parts of creation. First of all, I begin to perceive everything that exists outside of me. This is everything that exists outside. So everything that it transpires outside, I begin to feel as my body. I exit myself. I begin to feel it in this way. And the way that I felt myself as me, I no longer feel it as me, but as the originating point, originating state from which I exit. And this is naturally simply my one point. That's all it is. It's what we call the point in the heart. And the physical body, it disappears altogether. It doesn't exist. It only appeared to me that it exists. And it turns out that if we go back to our previous drawing, it turns out that me, this point, that was given to me, it was given to me so that from it I would acquire this entire tremendous world of infinity. And in it, and the light of infinity that exists in it. So then, how do we do this? After Adam has attained all the 125 degrees, he wrote a book about it. That was 5,707 years ago. So this really isn't the kind of book that we're used to. The format isn't the same, but we still have it. It is called The Secret Angel. Angel, the translation actually of that word is force. It's unfortunate that this word wasn't translated properly into our language. That's why we have this perception of an angel as some cherub with wings. But in reality, that's not the case. It is a special spiritual force. So he wrote a book about this force that has driven it outside of himself. And the 20 generations that followed Adam, 20 generations following Adam to Abraham, they studied this book, and Abraham, this is already many years after, that's not 5,707 years ago now, but about 3,500 years ago, let's say, roughly. He wrote a book called The Book of Creation. And this book was also used to study for many generations that followed until roughly 3,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago, perhaps. Moses wrote a book called the Torah, from the word or, light. Moshe or Moses was the author. And then what followed was the most interesting book that we have. It was about 1,800 years ago. And the author was Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And the book is the book of Zohar, which is also translates as light. And then the Ari, that's about 600 years ago. And he has had many books, many works, compositions. And then Baal Sulam, that's already 20th century. And you know his books as well. And then Rabash, that's also in the 20th century, the end of 20th century. All these are compositions. So why did they write these books? Because when we read these books with the right intention to connect to one another, we are led where? From the question of the meaning of life, we're brought to the group and the teacher. From there, we are led to the study, the books, from which we begin to understand that the most important thing, the key is unification. So from this unification, we go back to the books, to study the books, to draw from the books the surrounding light, which we call Or Makif. And when we truly acquire this unity, this connection, that is when we break through and we acquire a kind of unification between ourselves, where we all exit outside ourselves and perceive this general force around us. And in this general force, we truly reveal the upper light, which exists in all the Kabbalistic books. This is the way that it all structured. And today, all of our groups, we're all coming to the state where we're coming essentially to the end of our story, where we begin to practically actualize Kabbalah. It doesn't matter whether you've come here only recently, there are people here who have been studying 15, 20 years or more. None of that matters. Just as in any other circle of humanity, you have kids, you have old people, you have adults. Just the same thing exists in our Kabbalistic society. So today we're beginning to practically draw this upper light, the surrounding light, Or Makif. We're beginning to practically draw it. How? With the help of the right intention. With the right intention. We have studied for a long time in order to understand, to realize that we must have proper conduct, and we must to understand what we must do in order to attain these higher states. And for this reason, today we come to the understanding that only the right intention can help us. And this right intention is our focus here, right now. And this is what we must attain and come to. On this intention depends the upper light, which will then elevate us to our next state. And I hope that this next state, it's about to be revealed between us, because truly beginning with today, we are already in a state where we realize that without the upper light, we cannot solve this problem. And this upper light is already beginning to influence us. And at our lessons, we're beginning to realize how to work with it. So today we are entering a period of our development where we draw the upper light. It unites us, and we are able to perceive its manifestation, which means we ascend above our world, and we're going to stop sensing, perceiving this terrible, wretched world. It's going to fade away like an illusion does. And as it is written, see your world while you're still living. Together we're going to discover all of this within ourselves and everything that exists outside of us. This is what we've been speaking about over the past several days. I still hope that you're going to be able to listen to these lessons over the past 3 days. And next time, we're going to really get through all the questions and answers and try to clarify everything. This is really important because we're really beginning our practical realization of Kabbalah. So San Francisco, Moscow, New York, I see everybody. Be well. Philadelphia. I'm very happy to be here with you and to have you be together. So be well, and we'll see you at the Congress soon. I'm being shown a great many groups right now: Kaliningrad, Los Angeles, Germany, Nuremberg. I just can't see the names of the group from here. That are San Francisco. Until we meet again, be well, good luck to everybody, and I am hugging everybody.